Me now is New York Times investigative reporter and MSNBC national security contributor Michael Schmidt and former Brooklyn prosecutor, civil rights attorney, and MSNBC legal analyst Charles Coleman. So, Charles, we knew that this was going to just be a first step when Harvard filed. Now a judge has gotten involved. Where's this going?
Well, Chris, right now, this is an injunction which is basically going to stop Harvard. It's going to allow Harvard to continue to have international students, and it's going to stop the federal government from its ban. What I suspect is going to happen is that ultimately the judge is going to look at pretty much how much information has been requested of Harvard, how compliant have they been, and does the government have the authority to make the sweeping request that it has in terms of getting as much information on these students as it has asked for. Now, the government, on the other hand, is going to frame this as a matter of national security, which you already talked about, and basically say we need this information in order to determine whether any of these people pose a threat not only to the Jewish students on this campus, but overall to national security as a whole, such that they should not be here. So ultimately, when we have this hearing in a few weeks, that's what's going to be assessed by the judge, and they're going to ultimately weigh the interest of the university against the interest of, as the government will frame it, national security. What I think is going to happen here is that the judge is going to ultimately decide how much information the government can actually ask for, and then set a timeline that is reasonable for the university to produce it. And so long as that takes place, the judge is not going to allow this to move forward.
What is it that Donald Trump is trying to do here? Do we know?
I'm not sure. And I think that the most important thing that's going on here, and we've written about this and I've talked about it and folks have talked about it, Harvard's officials know they are in an extremely difficult spot because they find themselves fighting these multi-front wars with the administration. And there's this notion that if Harvard goes to court, they were going to get their money back and that they would be okay. But they really need that research money for years to come. And if, let's say they get it back this year, they have to go through the Trump administration and Congress to get it in the years that follow. And this, what happened yesterday, is yet another example of the problems that they face because they're persona non grata with the administration. But at the same time, what is Harvard supposed to do? Are they supposed to head back to the table and negotiate with Donald Trump? As we've seen with the law firms that try to negotiate with Donald Trump, there's Donald Trump's understanding of a deal, and then there's the other party's understanding of a deal. So if you're Harvard, you have massive problems, and problems in ways that are bigger than the law firms. When the law firms got hit with the executive orders, they went to court. Judges gave them restraining orders similar to what we saw today. But the federal government can't stop, knock out a quarter of the lawyers at the firm because they're here on visas. The federal government can't take away half of the firm's money. That's where Harvard finds itself, and they find themselves in a really, really tough spot.
Then was what I was just talking to Christine Romans about, which is that by one count, 41% of foreign students stay in the United States after they graduate. More apparently would like to. A lot of them are PhD grads, medical school graduates. The Trump administration thinks it's punishing Harvard, but is it really punishing the economy? Is it punishing businesses who already say that they need highly trained individuals, highly educated individuals, and they can't necessarily find them?
If you talk to Harvard folks, what they say is that what is going on here cuts to the heart of American academia, what academia means, what the United States means to other countries in the world, the idea that we're attracting the best and the brightest from around the world, the idea that this research money is consequential to not only medicine, but aerospace and national security. Harvard has struggled to make that argument publicly. They have talked to me about it. I've heard them out about this. To your point, there is a larger impact to what's going on here, but Harvard, to the larger issue, has got a multi-front legal and public relations fight with an administration that seems willing to pretty much do anything. If what they did yesterday, the Department of Homeland Security put out a statement that said to the foreign students of Harvard, if you are here, you can either transfer or leave the country. So let's say this restraining order happens today. If you're an international student at Harvard, do you say, oh, okay, like I'm cool to go in the fall? Or you're like, hold on a second. Like, am I going to wait every other week to see if a restraining order is in place or if a judge has overturned it?
Yeah, let me play what some students from Harvard have had to say about this.
It's a mixture of like shock, then to kind of just devastation, like frustration, and then uncertainty, anxiety. It's a combination of all of those feelings.
A lot of the conversations that currently sort of happen in the hallways, in between experiments, in between classes, are where a lot of meaningful progress can get done. And if you sort of remove a lot of the people that are having those conversations, it becomes a lot harder for ideas to spread.
So Charles, I was thinking as I was listening to some of those students and some of the others who I've heard who have said things like, I don't know what to do. I don't know whether I should go back home, if I'll be able to come back in. Should I apply somewhere else? Like, could individual students fight this legally?
Yes, they can, Chris, and there's precedent for that from what we've seen out of the state of California, where there have been a number of different students and individuals who have fought these types of mandates from the government successfully. It is a different conversation when you're talking about the information that has been requested by the federal government from Harvard as an institution versus an individual's right to fight and stay where they are. And I think that some of those students may find greater success in pursuing that very route as an individual, basically seeking redress by the court to try and stave off this notion that they would have to leave. Of course, the government's argument is going to be, we're not saying you have to leave, we're saying you have to leave Harvard. So you can potentially transfer if you don't want to go away or back to where you're from. But I think that some of these students are going to be able to successfully petition for their right to stay here and stay at the institution of their choosing.
But to his point, that's quite a way to run a university. So 27% of the student body is now in question. And okay, individually, maybe some of these students have good cases. Does every student have the ability and means to go out and get a litigator to go to court to make this argument? I mean, that is like.
Can I tell you just one example of where we are? The future Queen of Belgium is getting her master's degree in public policy there. The palace is investigating. Hers will not be obviously a financial question, but what does it serve to get her gone, right? So where does that leave everything?
Look, to the most important thing, Harvard finds themselves in a lose-lose situation. They continue down the path of being opposed to Trump the way that they are. They're going to continue to get hit with things like that and forced to fend it off. Judges may step in, still creates larger problems for them. At the same time, they've been widely praised for standing up to Trump. They're one of the few institutions that have done so during this administration, and Donald Trump has not shown himself, at least in the eyes of Harvard, to be someone that you can negotiate with. So what do you do?